I'm doing this video as part of my candidates recap on my YouTube channel, and I'm not planning for this to be a long video, just a recap of the games. Alright, so the candidates started yesterday. Yesterday was the first round. As we do know, all games have been drawn, but it was a pretty fighting tournament. Due to the feeder rule that in order to avoid possible collusion, the participants from the same country are paired in the first round. So that's why we have Naka versus Korana and Vidit versus Gukesh games in the first round. Alright, so let's go to the games. This was a very interesting psychological battle because Naka prepared this line, which is extremely rare. I don't think it's been played in the candidates before. This is pretty straightforward sideline by black, and the following moves are pre-forced. So knight f5, bishop here, knight c5 is forced, bishop g5, and black has to take on f5, otherwise he cannot develop. So takes, bishop e7, and here is the first critical position, because black wants to sort of get rid of the spin, move the knights. The trading of the bishops always favors, obviously, black. So white takes this knight in order to keep dominating position here in the center, thanks to this bishop. I had a lot of games in a similar structure arising out of my Spanish 9d4, d5 lines. One of the games that come to my mind is the game versus Naroditsky in the US Chess Championship. Again, thanks to the control of these squares and the difference in the bishops, white's advantage is undisputable. The black hope lies in the fact it's opposite color bishops, so he wants to trade the knights, heavy pieces, and transfer the game into the opposite color bishop endgame where he makes a draw. But this is a game for two results. Black does not contest for an advantage, he just wants to make a draw. And in this regard, Nakamura has succeeded. So castles, e4. Now white takes on e4 immediately. Basically transposition, rook e1 or queen d5, it doesn't matter. Kind of like rook takes, it's more active. And now there's a big choice for black whether to retreat the bishop to f6. But I think that Nakamura kind of a little bit misevaluated white's chances here, and this was a little bit careless. Because then he would, the bishop here is not that great. He's a little bit passive, plus black has some problems developing the queen, and the queen has to go to f6 at some point later. Hey guys, I'm doing the recap of the tournament for the YouTube, so I can put it on YouTube. That's what I'm gonna do right now. So I'm gonna be non-stop talking for next like 15-20 minutes, okay? All right, so queen d5, white wants to keep the pressure, obviously, along this diagonal, and keep an eye on this pawn to prevent black from playing a5, as well as trying to centralize the rooks. And as mentioned before, white has the planned potential of pushing this pawn to g5 and organize an attack against the black king. Black position is kind of precarious. He has to be careful here. Rook c8 is logical. Fabi finds the best move to complicate the position, immediately goes on the defensive, and now black has to find some concrete lines. Black decides to go for rook c5, simplify the position. However, after this, black is stuck with kind of two weaknesses here, and if white managed to eliminate the pawn on b5, his a-pawn, in addition to a much better bishop, will become a serious factor here. So black decides to jettison the b5 pawn anyway, but at the cost of activating his central pawn. Interesting concept. Fabi is very accurate. And now bishop c3. This move is very tactical. It goes with the whole tactical idea. Apparently, to be absolutely objective, this idea is not that sound, but otherwise black is stuck with the passive play, which you don't want to get when you play Fabiano. Because he will find a way to create problems, and if you want to solve those problems, you need to spend a lot of time, which will result in time trouble for you and eventually blunder, and you're going to lose the game. So Naka plays this psychological move, he gives up this pawn, but now he goes with a counter-offensive. And this is a pretty amazing move because I'm not sure if Fabi has seen it. Probably he has seen it because there was no other alternative. If he thought the black's gonna just play d4 and you know, keep the bishop here and play this position pawn down, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. So the point of this rook f2, if you take, there is this check, and black is actually using the fact that all white heavy pieces, major pieces, on the wrong side of the board. You cannot take the bishop thanks to the mate. King h1 must be played, and then bishop e5, threatening this mate. There are two moves, h3 or g3. After h3, queen f4, the threat of the mate basically forces the draw because of king f1, bishop g3. And you cannot give up the pawn because, you know, it's mate. Yeah. So the only way to play for white would be to play g3, but then take. And black has, again, an option between making a draw by playing queen e4 or playing for a win after bishop f4. So that's not exactly what white wants to get. So he grabs the second pawn, connects the queen to the king sides, and Nakamura plays queen h4. And now white has extra pawn, but the position becomes really sharp. White king is now opened as well. And is a critical point where the factor that Fabiano was down to 20 minutes to make the time control in this complicated position. He decided not to take a lot of risk. So queen d3 is normal, and rook f6. Also using the tactics of queen f2, queen f1. So g3 is played, queen b4, right? And king g2 is logical, avoiding the checks. But rook f1 is also possible to eliminate this active piece. This active piece not only provides attacking chances for black, but also protects the pawn. So if you eliminate this rook, potentially with rook going to the 7th, black is going to be put on the defensive, and combined with the idea of pushing this pawn and creating threats, this advantage looks pretty serious. But okay, king g2, bishop b2 is probably was being played to put Fabi into the time trouble, because Fabi spent 8 minutes to play king g2, right? Yeah, g6 is normal, but then again, rook f1, trade the rooks, and black is on the defensive. After bishop b2, black is sort of saying, I want to trade the queens, or I want to blockade along the dark squares here. But in any case, a4 would be the move that creates a lot of problems for black, as the pawn goes really fast, and potentially after the rook trade here, the pawn goes to a6, and computer thinks advantage is almost winning. I agree that this is very unpleasant for black, given that, again, white's bishop is doing a lot of work. Black bishop has zero work, no defensive, no offensive capabilities. The only thing black can do is just sort of create singular threats with check, which can be easily deflected. But Fabi plays rook f5, and he goes with the wrong rook. Yeah, he should play with the rook on f1 and keep this rook on d7, because the queen is perfectly placed already. In fact, I would think that, you know, if white can just trade the rooks and actually trade the queens and keep the rook and bishop alive, it would be a lot easier for him to play for a win, because the idea is simple. White brings the king to the queen side to help to push this pawn as far as possible, and you also have a second passer. So black life is very complicated. But after rook f5, white's active rook is gone. He needs to play rook on d7, so that's why queen f3. But as you can see, white's advantage is gone because black prevents rook arriving on d7, and he is ready to trade the rook. You need the rooks in this position. If you don't have the rooks in this position, then black sets up easy block on the dark squares while protecting everything with the queen. And with the queen and opposite bishop color, white king has no respite from the perpetual checks. You need the rooks. You need to trade. White needs to trade the queens. Black needs to trade the rooks. Those are the plans. All right. So a4, but king g7, and this position is not winning anymore for white. And he misses actually a nice tactic. You cannot take the rook, thanks to the check. Recapture and then obvious draw. But if you don't take the rook, then this pawn is gone. The bishop cannot protect it. So it was a blunder by Fabi. Rook a7. Very nice, and again, the queen has to protect white naked king, and it's very hard to say. probably queen d3, but then the computer says queen b7, making the spin and creating again a threat to attack this pawn, preventing this pawn from moving to a6. So Fabi plays rook b1, and after queen d8, this pawn is completely gone. He goes something like this and tries to play queen b7, but this is dead draw because black king is very safe and this extra pawn is absolutely meaningless. So it was very nice save by Nakamura in this game, and he's gonna have a second game with the white color against Fabiano. So I think it's a good result for Naka. All right, so let's go to the next game, which is the game between Abbasov and Nepo. In this game, we have Queen's Gambit, but there is this small caveat where black prepares this dc4. Usually black waits for the bishop to move, only then to take on c4. But in this case, white probably wanted to avoid potential Carlsbad structure or even c5 push. So he decides to force the matter by playing c5. And now white is faced with the choice whether to go into the endgame, which is probably analyzed by Nepo to be an equal game and a draw. So white plays knight f3, tries to keep some at least counterplay. And but after taking, white is now again faced with the choice: if you take with the piece, then there is a lot of trace and symmetrical pawn structure. Very likely the game will end in a draw anyway. So he takes the pawn and plays the famous queen pawn isolated position. Knight c6. Nepo plays this very quickly. Obviously this has been analyzed by him. Rook e1 is normal. Sometimes in this position, I used to play this position slot with white. And those of you who remember, I had a fantastic second game in my match versus Anatoly Karpov, which I managed to win with white. But also some other games against Bilyavsky and Linares, but the bishop was on e3. I sacrificed the bishop on e6. Then a game against Nigel Short. So I used to like this as white because, you know, white has decent attacking chances, but that was in the past. Now, in the modern day and age, black has sort of discovered a lot of great defensive ideas. But again, one of the main white's ideas here is to create an attack based on the either pawn push or creating this queen d3 mating attack, right? But in order to do that, you sort of need to play a3, queen d3, rook d1, bishop a2, bishop b1. And it's very important, if you play for the attack, that the rooks are on d1 and e1. If the rooks are on any other file, then white doesn't have an attack, okay? That's one thing that I can tell you from my experience. So if you play for an attack, you need the rooks in the center. So let's see what Abbasov does. He plays rook e1, solid, but now after a6, you don't really have time to play a3, queen d3. So he plays rook c1, but this is already wrong, okay? So you kind of need, the rook needs to be on d1, okay, not on c1. And you need the bishop on a2 because the pawn on a3 will take care of the square on b4. So after rook c1, black is now, as you can see, black is actually better. And white now has to look for ways to make the draw because black is really fast with rook c8, knight a5, c4. Or black is coming with knight b4, d5. And with the bishop on h4, there is no way for white to create any mating attack, right? You really need this bishop on this diagonal. So in order to do that, you probably needed to play bishop d3, which is computer's first choice actually, and bishop b1. That would be certainly a better way for white to play this. This is where bishop must be, okay? And still, you also need the queen here, but if queen comes here, then knight goes b4. So that's why computer plays a3. And as we can see, this is like a whole analysis game, right? The line goes like b4, now white plays queen d3. If you take on b4, knight b4, it's absolutely nothing for white. Again, there is no attack. The only way for white to try to go for an attack would be to play knight e5, get the queen here, play very slowly, and queen to g3. That's the only other way I can see, but it's very slow, and black will just, you know, trade everything, knight d7, trade the knight, So that's why the computer plays this incredible move queen d3 and actually says that white has an advantage because suddenly there is this mating threat that I was talking about. And black has to play g6, and now there is a lot of great interesting things that can happen. White can either play knight a4, keep the pawn on a3 and put the knight on c5, or he can play knight e2 with the idea of knight f4 and sacking the knight. So this is actually a pretty dangerous position for black, and that's what I think Basov should have played, okay? But when he played bishop b3, he sort of gave up his entire advantage, and now he has to look for ways to draw, but okay, he realizes this. You know, he's not going to play bishop c2 because you sort of lost the whole tempo. So he takes and plays d5 and says, okay, I understand I screwed up and I just want to make a draw. It's a pretty intelligent thing to do, and realize the reality of what's going on the board, accept it, and create a new plan, realign your priorities, and in this position the realization is black is better thanks to this capture, and then black has two rooks and a bishop, which is stronger than the knight and two rooks in the endgame. So white has to be a little bit careful, but he finds the defense, and the defense is he just plays rook d2. There is no easy way for black to get to this pawn, and any pawn endgame here is actually a draw. And rook e4, pretty much forcing the matter, and now they repeated the position and agreed on a draw. The reason is because if you take, king e7, king e3, king e6, king d4, white king is very active, threatening actually to go here. Black can play either king d6 and then f6, but it doesn't matter because white is just gonna either keep the pawn here or wait for black king to go to e5 and then meet him with king e3 in opposition. And the only way for black to try to play for a win would be to play something like f5 or h5 and try to get his king to one of the pawns here. But it's not so easy to do because white can just play this, and it's a direct opposition where black has no choice but to accept the draw. Alright, so that was the second game, and then we come to this extremely interesting game between Alireza and Pragna, which ended, I think, prematurely because the position offered a lot of chances. Thank you, Troy Chess, for subscribing, by the way. Always the question, is the pawn strong or weak? The pawn structure is like your backbone in your body, okay? If there is a single bone that is not aligned, or there is a weakness, yeah, the whole organism actually suffers. So same thing is in chess. The only thing is, in chess, people sometimes, you know, purposely they ruin the pawn structure, but because they know they get something like really strong benefit. Like, you know, if you agree sort of like to mess up your pawn structure in a trade for like $1 billion, yeah, or like, I don't know, just something that compensates for such incredible pain and suffering. Yeah. Okay, it's a real bad analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. There's always a balance, and like you're looking forward to it. And the way I like to play chess is I like to see my pawn structure sort of to be intact, because it's easy for me then to understand what my plan is. If I have a terrible pawn structure, I understand the only plan is to try to compensate for it by aggression and going for an attack, okay, or something. But if you have a normal pawn structure, then you don't have to worry, because your position is naturally strong, and all you have to do is find the correct move to either keep the balance or, you know, to create a plan to try to outplay your opponent. All right, so in this game we have Spanish Open, which is a rare guest on this level, but Spanish Open is being favored by a lot of Indian chess players. They've been studying it ever since the days when Anand used it in the match against me in the candidates in Las Palmas 95, where he was seconded by the one of the strongest theoreticians of this line at the time, Artur Yusupov, grandmaster who now lives in Germany, but he was also a candidate. He's very famous for beating Vasily Ivanchuk and eliminating Vasily from the candidates when Vasily was rising star. And that defeat actually influenced Vasily Ivanchuk really hard. And yeah, there is a whole butterfly effect of things. Yeah, the thing is that Yusupov beat Vasily, but he never made it to the top candidates, and he was a very strong player, but he never quite managed to get to the World Chess Championship title. And unlike Vasily, who is definitely, you know, World Chess Champion material, you know, Yusupov was like this hard worker, but you know, he was missing something, yeah, this spark, which I think is absolutely critical to become world champion. All right, but that's a digression. Okay, so we have this open Spanish, and bishop c2 is an old main line. This line is like older than me. The idea is that white wants to immediately attack this knight and move the bishop away from the counterattack. So the knight goes to d2 again, and white wants to play knight d4, create the center space, knight b3, just very aggressive. So bishop g4. Yeah, I think it's pretty normal. Again, the idea is, you know, black is trying to use the awkwardness to white pieces and slightly weak and unprotected pawn on e5. So if you play bishop b3, it's bishop e6 repetition. If you play knight d2, there's a pretty good chance that black can either just take on d2, and then you have a whole problem with this pawn, yeah? And it's a very healthy pawn. Black just takes, goes back to e6, and black is much better. So you have to take with the queen, and then you have this position, and this looks pretty good for black too. Yeah. So yeah. So the only question is sometimes white plays h3 here, or but queen e1. Okay, queen e1. I really don't remember this line, but you know, the ideas are the same. Yeah. You force black to take on f3 at some point. This knight transfer to e6 is pretty standard. Because the knight is a perfect blockader since the Nimzovich times, yeah, and black prepares to play c5 and d4. If black can get c5, d4 in, he's pretty much okay, and the bishop to g6. So yeah, so this is pretty interesting. King h1 was kind of weird move, but the idea is that white prepares knight g1, the idea for f5 before black managed to put the bishop. However, black plays bishop g5, and you can't really do it, yeah. So he plays knight b3, but at the same time, this bishop made an extra move. And the king is more useful on h1 than on g1. So for example, if you play knight b3, black has to take this knight anyway, right? But then white has to spend the time to push this king in order to put the rook here. So what he does is pretty smart. Yeah? He plays king h1 first, and now he plays knight b3, and he forces black to move the bishop a second time in a row. Otherwise, you just play knight d4 and f4, and white is just better, because this knight took away this critical square from this guy. So black has to take this guy, because if you play bishop g6, then it's pretty much just queen e2. And white has the standard binds on this position, yeah, potentially f4. Yeah, this position is very unpleasant to play for black. There are a lot of nuances here which I cannot like explain in this video. It's going to be a short recap, but if you're interested in it, again, look for the games by famous specialists in this line, starting with Yusupov and then now Indian players, and you will get the idea. All right, so take, bishop g5, absolutely critical. You cannot allow white to have the pair of bishops. They will destroy black king side, yeah, so you need to play bishop g5. Great play by Prague. G1, and now knight c1, extremely strong move. The knight in this position will no longer be able to do anything because he has no second knight for support. So you need to replace this knight, and now this knight moves to d3, where he supports the f-pawn push, and then the bishop can go to b3 and hit this guy. So also in addition, knight d3 can block potentially black's pass pawn on the d file. So white has a ruined pawn structure a little bit. But because, you know, there is this potential attack on the king side, potential f4-5 movement, and very strong bishop, because black's pawns are kind of weak until you connect them with the c6 pawn, but in order to do that, you need to displace this knight somewhere. So there is a lot of nuances here again, and white has a little bit more space and easy game to play because black king must go to the king side. There is no other way for him to go. But if you go to the king side, that's where white's pieces are waiting for him. The bishop, the rook, the queen, the knight, and these pawns are all coming for this black king. So black has to set up the defense on the king side. And one of the only defenses he can think of is to castle and go for f5 and try to block the bishop. So let's see what happens. Queen h4 first. Attack the queen immediately. Make sure, you know, the fight for the square control is very important. So queen h5, knight d3. And now white is ready to push the queen, double the rooks, yeah. Castles, and apparently this is not the most precise move. 97 was better, but okay, it's nuances which I'm not going to go into right now. Queen e2, again protecting, connecting the rooks, protecting the pawns, potentially with the eye for f4, rook somewhere, you know, a threat. But queen e3 was also normal. Because if black plays d4, then there is queen e4 always, yeah, counter-attacking. And I think queen on e3 is a little bit better placed because of the knight c5 ideas, or queen c5 in some lines. But okay, f5, very precise. And now we have this balanced position where white's pawn structure, ruined pawn structure, is compensated by the aggression here, very strong bishop, potential weaknesses, but black knights are kind of really weirdly placed, and he needs still some time to consolidate his position. Okay, so this is dynamic equality, I would say this. So f4, rook h6 immediately, f3. This is to close off any potential tactics here. So rook f8, queen f2. Okay, playable. The idea is that white keeps an option of playing rook e1, not just to g1, because on g1, you know, it's stuck, yeah? You attack this pawn, but on e1, the rook is more relevant. It hits the whole file, it allows knight e5, it protects squares, also a4 is not a possibility, so let's not forget about that. So rook ff6, Prague plays very precise chess. The idea of rook ff6 is like, in some lines, if you play queen f7, then there's always like this f5 thing. Yeah, but also a4, yeah. So let's see this, a4, rook here, take. You're threatening to take on f4 at some point, but there is rook a6 here. So there is some pins here, which might be unpleasant. It's still okay for black, but you need to be precise in calculations. Rook ff6 allows black to consolidate on the king side even more and potentially leave this rook here. So I expect a4 here, but he plays rook e1. I think a4 is a little bit more accurate because you create the pressure on the 8th, because this rook left the 8th, right? So you should immediately think about using this fact. Yeah. Again, the computer thinks it doesn't matter, it's just equal. But let's see, rook e1, queen f7, and this knight protects this square, this knight protects this square. Knights are vulnerable, but the bishop is not in the right place. The bishop needs to be like on b3 or g4. It's not so easy to get there. So queen g3, logical. Protecting the pawn, creating the pressure, waiting for knight e7, because then you play knight e5. So black needs to have this knight here, which means this pawn is permanently weak. But he finds a really good move, rook h5. Rook is really well placed, protects the pawn, protects the 5th, prevents any sort of rook e5, f5 things. And as you can see, black set up really nice defensive fortification, and white has no plan. So it's equal. So a4, rook h6, okay, rook e2, and now black goes for the aggression, which I think could have possibly misfired. I don't like this aggression because you have only 2 active rooks here, while white has the whole active piece formation against the king. So I would say that black has no chance of creating an attack here, especially with the knight here. So if the knight was on f5, then maybe something could happen. Yeah, but the knight is on c6. So it's very unlikely that black can have an attack, and rook f3 apparently is incorrect and could have had dire consequences for Prague. And now, yeah, this is kind of amazing that they have very low amount of time. They have 10 moves to make. White has 5 minutes. But maybe this is why this happened, yeah? White has only 5 minutes to make 10 moves, so Prague decided to gamble and start very sharp calculation lines to try to trick Alireza into a blunder, okay? But again, this is very double-edged strategy. I think it could easily have, backfired. AB5 first, obviously, but knight c5 is also okay. And now queen h5 is a serious mistake. And I am not sure why Alireza didn't play this simple move, rook g2. Probably he was worried about rook h3. But the thing is, there is this nice tactical solution. Check, 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 and if king e8, there is this nice rook h7. Suddenly, black queen is completely trapped. Okay, I think they both missed it. Queen has no moves anywhere. Okay, queen is trapped, and the game is lost for black. And if you don't play rook h3, the whole point is this pawn is going to be gone. Yeah, if this knight moves, this pawn is gone. So knight c5, rook g7, and rook g8. And you must, and it's just mate. So the only defense for black, according to the computer here, is knight e5. Trying to close the file so he can grab this guy. And then if knight c5 is rook, I think rook g7 is normal, and then just bishop d1. And white wins the exchange. So, okay, so there is only move again. And now white has only one move which gives an advantage, which is this. You must take to get this very sharp line. Queen g1 immediately. Okay, you can take on, the difference between rook g7, queen g1 is that maybe black can save position, but after queen g1 first, you cannot take the rook because you lose the rook, right? You cannot play rook g6 because after bishop g6, it's bishop h5 hitting everything black has lost. So you must play knight e6, and we get this position, but there is very important queen g5 move. The threat of queen d8, and now bishop, queen, and pawn are very strong against black's open king, especially a very bad knight here. So this is lost for black. So Prague took a risk, and he could have actually lost the game if Alireza found this rook g2. But again, this is a situation where the amazing tension that players have clearly takes a toll. Yeah, you're afraid. You're afraid to make a single mistake, and this sharp position, you have 4 minutes on the clock, and it kind of separates the regular players from the elite players. All right, I'm pretty sure Garry Kasparov would have played rook g2 pretty much by instinct and would have probably won the game. Alireza, still I don't think he has that kind of experience yet, this killer experience yet, so he plays safe move. Knight g5, and there is a mate threat, and if rook f4, then there is this nice trap, okay, queen f2. You cannot take because of mate, back rank, and if rook f6, there is bishop h7, rook f8 mate anyway. So that was probably his calculation, but unfortunately for Alireza, black has knight e5. And after this move, white has nothing better than a draw because he must take this knight. Yeah, if you don't take the knight, if you play something like this, it's still gonna be equal position. But you cannot play this, yeah, because now black is winning.
So you have to take this knight, and black salvages the game by going for this perpetual queen h5, and nothing white can do to avoid this perpetual. All right. So basically, it was just one mistake that made the game a draw. Very exciting draw, though. All right, and we now get to our last game, which is very, very short. It's only 21 moves. It was actually a little bit surprising to me because, yeah, I played a lot of Nepo games, yeah, for sure. We had some absolutely crazy draws. I had amazing saves against him. Yeah, it seems like, you know, I'm like have a lot of amazing saves against some amazing players. Like against Nepo, I think I created a study 2 times. One study where I was in both games I was down a piece in the end game. In the first game I had 2 pawns and a rook versus bishop, rook, and a pawn, and it was actually a theoretical draw. And the second game I had rook, 2 pawns versus rook, knight, and pawn, and it was also a theoretical draw. It was pretty amazing. I think we talked about it briefly, and he was pretty shocked. Yeah, both times down the piece, but it's theoretical draw. I don't think there are any books on those draws yet. I don't think they're known positions. It's something, you know, I had to discover during the game, those fortresses. But you need, but you know, I'll put those games sometime in a separate video lecture. All right. So what we have here is we have another, but we have this Tarsh thing, yeah. And surprisingly, you know, Gukir doesn't go into the main very safe line. I think where white has minimal advantage. He decides to play e3, and he has some preparation here. But unfortunately for him, Vidit is one of the best prepared players on the planet. Okay, so rook a2 looks like interesting idea. White sort of tries to put the pressure on the black center before he completes development. But Vidit is prepared. He plays the best move, takes, and now pawn must take. The reason pawn must take is because here after a5, if you play b5 and you take here, black can either play bishop e5, and white is completely undeveloped with the king in the center. Position is about to be opened, and you cannot take it because of bishop b2. All right, knight f6, queen f6. White loses the piece, and there is a threat of bishop g4, rook c8 coming. So it's a disaster. So that's why he took with the pawn, but it was probably part of the preparation because you open the file, and it looks pretty good. If you put the bishop here, rook here, f4, then bishop d3, right? Knight joins the attack. It looks pretty good. However, white doesn't have time because black finds this a5 move, which he played after 20 minutes of thinking, and it's the best move because you need to open white king. You need to open the rook. You need to create threats to white king. And you also need to do something about this tension. If black can force white to play c5 and keep this pawn structure intact, then black is better. Okay. The reason he is better is because now the king is very safe. Because this pawn is safe and there is no tactics here. This rook is like meaningless. And yeah. So white really needs to open up the center to open this bishop and this file. But it's not happening. So he took here e5 immediately. I think we looked at this line previously where black could have taken on b4 first, because after here and bishop f7 or queen f7, black is just better because white king is too open, the bishops are passive, and clear compensation. But he played e5 first, which is okay. The only problem was that it gives white more options. Yeah. So he plays knight b5, he could have taken on a5, and then you really need to play this first. You need to play this, queen a5, a4, and
bishop b4 or rook c8. Yeah. And then black goes into this whole blockade on the dark squares thing, which is equal. But okay, white plays knight b5. He wants to get rid of this bishop, open the bishop. Makes absolutely perfect sense. Take, 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 take. And queen b4, very logical. And white is actually in danger of getting worse because his king is still stuck in the center. Black king is safe. All black has to do is sort of finish the developments, open some files, and white risks to be in serious problems because of the spin. So this queen is a big problem. So white needs to try to solve this, and he plays queen c2. The idea is to play the queen c4, queen c3. Okay, you need to get rid of the spin, activate the queen, and create some threats. And this is where the position gets really weird because I think black is better. He has extra pawn, first of all. Wait, does he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, no extra pawn. But this bishop is like not that great. He has no targets, nothing. Yeah, I think on the official commentary, I think they mentioned knight d5 as being very safe. But I kind of like rook e8, keep this bishop closed. But then it's true. Bishop c3, queen h4. And the idea is black prepares for this castle or something. It's not so easy for white to... Now there is no rook g1, right? You lose the pawn. So what are you going to do? h3, bishop d7, rook g1, rook a3, rook c8. This is one possibility, but now things get a little bit complicated. Actually might be better for white in terms of practical play. A little bit easy to play. Pair of bishops, f4 threats, yeah, bishop here. Black really sort of needs the pawn on f6 and the knight somewhere in d6, which he's not gonna make it. It's not so simple to do. And the queen is a little bit not in the right spot, yeah. The queen should be here attacking the bishop. So, yeah, so rook e8, bishop c3, and yeah, maybe that's why the computer says queen c5 or queen d6. But yeah, if white can get this battery going to take away all these key squares from black, rook, and pair of bishops, it actually might be better for white, yeah. So maybe rook e8 actually is not correct, yeah. In that case, commentators knight e5 looks pretty strong because this pawn is gone, which means you can pin this guy, play f6, but after queen b2, it looks like a draw, yeah. Looks like a draw anyway because the queens are off, the endgame. The endgame is good for black. I like black's endgame. Again, because this bishop is not going to be part of the problems for black. Black puts the stuff here and starts to push the pawn. And the difference in the pawn structure, double pawns here versus pass pawn here, and this very nice strong square for the black pieces. Yeah, actually black is perfectly fine here, but it's very likely a draw. So in that respect, you know, Vidit probably is correct. Yeah, he saw that he might be actually a little bit worse, so he decides to force the matters by playing this absolutely amazing bishop g4 move. Absolutely amazing move. You win a tempo. You want to play rook c8, you also attack the pawn, and you sacrifice whole bishop just so you can play this and knight e4. And now both rooks are very aggressive. There's obvious threat of, you know, taking on d2, take, rook a2, and win the bishop. And white cannot defend against this threat. Like bishop g2, take, and there is two ways: queen b3 or very exciting computer line. Rook c1, queen g4 first, and if bishop f3, then queen c4. And white loses the queen. Yeah, so pretty amazing move. And now white must do what he did in the game. He has to accept the draw, immediately draw, and play bishop c3. Obviously, you cannot play queen c3, right? Because this is just sort of pawn down, a lot of mates, white is completely lost. So bishop c3 is must, and then queen a3 is correct, again threatening rook c8. The bishop trades are good for black, so white cannot accept this trade. Okay, otherwise black is better. Thanks to his better pieces, more activity. The knight and queen versus queen and bishop. So white must play this, and black must repeat, because if you play queen a5, you close your rook. So queen b4 must be played, and that's an absolutely amazing draw. And yeah, very good calculation skills. Very good calculation skills from both. Gukesh tried to play something very unorthodox, which I think was not a correct way to play against Vidit. As you can see, Vidit actually solved all his problems and was in the position where he could play for an advantage with black. But on the other hand, if you play normal stuff against Vidit, he probably has it analyzed until move 40. And yeah, Vidit is like very tough opponent. He's also dark horse in this tournament, and he's also in his best form. So it will be very interesting how far the guy will go. Yeah, I think he's very competitive. It's not like people would expect him to take first place and win the tournament, but he can beat anybody in this tournament. That's what I'm saying. Okay, there are some people, you probably know them, like they consider to be dangerous dark horses, and in their good form they can beat anybody. Okay, so that's what Vidit is. Gukesh is a little bit different. I think he's the guy who needs to be in the form to play well, because I've seen him when he is not in his good form, then it's a disaster. Okay, so he really is dependent on a lot of things. Okay, so today, this was the recap of the yesterday's first round games. Today we're gonna have the matchups, which are Pragg versus Gukesh, and Pragg is definitely gonna try to cash in on his white color against his compatriot. Nakamura with white versus Vidit, and as I spoke before, Vidit is has one of the best preparations on the planet, and I actually think that Naka has a big danger of running into worse position with white out of the opening. I actually expect Vidit to equalize very comfortably. So the task for Nakamura is to find the opening line, which will lead into the middle game, where the stuff cannot be analyzed completely, right? There are a lot of nuances, and he'll try to outplay Vidit in those nuanced middle game. Or he can just go for a draw and get sort of a rest day. I'm not sure what is their schedule. What is their schedule? They play every day. 4 rounds, then a rest day, then 3 rounds, another rest day, then another 3. Okay, so they have 1 rest day after 3 or 4 rounds. That's not a lot, actually. So this will be a very tough tournament for these gentlemen. Very, very tough tournament. Jan versus Alireza, this is going to be a fireworks game. We all know that, right? Jan is an attacking player. Alireza is also an attacking player. So I expect a result here, a decisive result, okay? I expect in this game, Pragg chances to win against Gukesh, I think, a little bit higher. So it's like 60-40% of chance for Pragg to win this game. In this game, the draw percentage is like incredibly high. I think it would be like, I would give this game 80% of being a draw, okay? If somebody who can win this game, you know, Naka is still in Naka. Yeah, he's in his best form. He is extremely resourceful. So I find it very hard for Vidit to win this game. Very, very hard, especially with the black color. But it is possible. So I would say 80% draw chance, and about 20, okay, about a decisive result, it's 40 chance of winning for Vidit and 60 chance of winning for Nakamura. All right, that is my probability calculation. In Nepo versus Alireza, this is very interesting. Nepo has a big advantage because he has a huge experience playing in these events and winning these events, which means he out-prepares his opponents. He goes into the mental, he beats them in the mind game, and he beats them on board. All right. So that's what he's going to try to do with Alireza, but it's not simple. Yeah, Alireza also has now experience, although he doesn't have experience playing a lot in the candidates. But you know, he played a lot of elite tournaments, so it's not going to be easy game for Nepo. But if Nepo has a chance to win this tournament, he must win this game. Okay, if he wants to win the tournament, he must win this game today, because the second game he'll be black against Alireza. All right, so he must win today. So I would give Nepo 60% of winning, and draw is very unlikely. It's like 30% of draw chance. All right, Fabi versus Abbasov. Very interesting. Abbasov is a dark horse. Nobody expects him to play well. We all read the Magnus interview where he said that Abbasov is not going to have a good tournament, or stuff like that. I kind of disagree with this. We don't know. Yeah, they all deserve the candidate spots for sure. Abbasov is completely unknown. He doesn't have this experience, but also that means that all these top guys, they don't have experience playing Abbasov as well. And we have seen the first round how Abbasov felt the danger and just went for the draw. Yeah. So what's going to happen this game is that also Fabiano must win this game. If he wants to win the candidates, he must win this game because he's playing against the lowest rated person. I don't want to say weakest player in this tournament because we don't know who is going to be the weakest player in this tournament. All right. We will know who is not the weakest, but not in the best form. Right? Okay, let's say there is all these players are great players. What can happen is that two of them or a few of them will be not in the best, but in like really average form. Yeah, and some of the players will be in the best form. So what I'm saying is that Fabi must win this game in order to have chances to win the candidates. Yeah, every white collar game matters. So he's gonna try to come up with some amazing deep prep line, which is he's famous for, and Abbasov is gonna try his very hard to hold his fort. Yeah, because now Fabiano actually used his second white in a row. He plays in the first round game. He played white against Naka, and he drew the game, which he had actually a huge chance of winning. That means he messed up. Okay, so Fabi's one chance is gone, and he now has second white, which he must use, because if you miss chances like that, it's very hard to win the tournament later. Okay, with black, it's possible, but the chances will be minimal. So I don't know. Again, because Abbasov is such a dark horse, I expect Fabi to win this game like it's more than 60. It should not be more than 70. So probably 65% win chance for Fabi versus 65 win chance for Fabi. The draw is, I would say, it's like 40%. 40 is too much. 35%, yeah. All right. So my prediction for this round is this either white wins or it's a draw. This is probably a draw. And this game is anything goes. But I suspect that Nepo has higher chance, so probably white wins. And in this game, probably white wins. Okay. So that means, a lot of whites, like 3 whites out of 4 games, have a chance to win this round. So this will be very interesting. And yes, I think Fabi should have beaten Naka yesterday, absolutely. All right, Firo plays some fun moves, but he missed a large advantage. He blundered, which is not a good sign. If somebody blunders, like Fabi blundered yesterday, and Alireza blundered yesterday, they actually spoiled their winning chances. Yeah, it's not good. It shows that their form is not best. Okay, and that's not good news for you. You want to be in absolute best form when you come to play in this tournament, starting from the very first round. They both missed their chance to win the game and to make a big step towards winning the event. Right? So, how many games are total? There are like what 7 rounds in each circle, right? So it's 14 rounds. So there are only 13 games left. 13 games only. Okay, that's not a lot. All right, gentlemen, that was a recap for yesterday's rounds, and today we're probably gonna have our thematic arena because yesterday I messed up. So I'll be here like in a few hours, and we're gonna do our arena. We're gonna take a look at some games, but I will do the recap like this tomorrow. All right, I'll do the recap tomorrow, and I'll put it on the YouTube so you guys can watch it. And thank you for coming, and I'll see you guys later tonight, okay? Yeah, I'm posting this recap on YouTube today. All right, guys, thank you. See you.